Buddy. I hope that you're well and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade. Today I'll be doing my our grade 3 English lesson on abbreviations. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, sorry, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts. We're doing grade 3. And then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts. And then we're scrolling down up until we get to our chapter of abbreviations. All right. So we're doing our chapter of abbreviations. We're doing the subject of English Language Arts. Grade 3. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of abbreviations is to abbreviate customary units of measurements, and we're also going to abbreviate metric units of measurements. All right, so that is going to be our chapter as well as our lessons for today. We are doing abbreviations, and the lessons that we are doing today is to abbreviate customary units of measurements, and we're going to abbreviate metric units of measurements. All right. So this is a continuation of our previous lessons, and we also did abbreviations, and we had to abbreviate days of the week. We had to abbreviate months of the year, and we also had to abbreviate names of people or titles of people. So now we're going to abbreviate the customary units of measurements as well as units of measurements. And when it comes to abbreviations, right? Abbreviations, it's a short version of a word. It's like a shorter version of a word. That is abbreviations. And when it comes to units of measurements, units of measurements, it is often abbreviated in recipes, or it is even abbreviated in informal writing. And when it comes to abbreviating units of measurements, right? And then, for example, we'll say something like foot or feet, 5 feet, 5 foot. And then we abbreviate it by FT. And remember, when it comes to abbreviations, you need to also add or let's say some of the abbreviations, we need to also add the period after the word that we shortened. Sometimes it's just the first two letters, sometimes it's the first four letters, sometimes the first three letters. It depends on the specific word. Because you see, with feet or foot, right? It's only FT, which is the first. Look at the first, it's not even the first two letters, it's the first letter and the last letter. And then look at gallon. Gallon is again the first three letters. Gallons of milk, and that is gal, GAL, period. And then if you look at the word inches, 5 inches, 7 inches, 10 inches, 2 inches, it's only I in period. Only the first two letters, period. You see, so we cannot really say it is the first two letters, the first three letters, the first. It's, you can't really say. I think we're just gonna have to remember it after time. The same way with miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, mi, the first two letters, period. And then ounces. Do you see how the word ounces changes from OUNCE to Oz? So, which means that after time, when you use abbreviations or you will abbreviate the word, you are just going to have to remember the abbreviated form of that word. Then we have pint, PINT, and if we abbreviate pint, it is PT, just the first letter and the last letter, pint. And then pounds, right? It's LB. So LB and pound, I cannot even say choose the first two letters, three letters, five. No, it is basically a changed LB. And then quarts, it's QT. Tablespoons is TBSP, period. Teaspoons is TSP. And then yard is YD. So all I can say is you are just going to have to remember the abbreviated form of the word once you abbreviate the word, right? You're just going to have to remember it. So that is basically units of measurements when you measure some things. 2 tablespoons of 1 teaspoon of 5 pounds, and so on, 10 inches. And then we also have units of measurements, right? That is often also abbreviated in recipes and in formal writing. So here we can also measure, and this we can measure in a distance, which is kilometers, length, liters, milliliters, how big or how small something is, right? And these are units of measurements. You can either measure it in recipes, you can measure it in, you can measure certain things with it, distance with it. And then we have millimeters. Millimeters is mm. Yes, 1 teaspoon of something. Then we have centimeters, cm. Meters, just more than centimeters, which is only m for meters. Then we have kilometers, usually distance if we are driving. And then we measure that in kilometers, which is km. Then we have milligrams, grams, usually uh, like you measure um, sugar or something, kilograms, pardon, milliliters, something liquidy, liquids, liters, sorry, L. And when it comes to the units of measurements, because these are abbreviations for metric units, they do not end with a period. So these ones, right, for metric units, we don't use, like after the abbreviated form, we do not put our period. But for all the other abbreviated forms, you need to add a period. All right. So now we're going to a+students.ca. And then we're going to continue with abbreviations, specifically units of measurements, as well as metric units of measurements. And keeping in mind, metric units of measurements, we do not add or does not end with a period. But all the other abbreviated words need to be, it needs to end basically with a period. All right, so now we're going to a+students.ca. We're going to continue with our units of measurements, and then we're going to do our test. All right. And remember, we said that an abbreviation is a short version of a word. And these are a few words that was abbreviated, right? And this we can abbreviate it in recipes or in informal writing. All right. So now we're going to our test. Okay, before we go to our test, let us just abbreviate certain units of measurement. If we look at gallon, right? 1 gallon. How are we going to abbreviate the word gallon? 1 gallon. How are we going to abbreviate the word gallon? Gallon. 1 gallon. How are we going to abbreviate the word gallon? Remember, don't forget the period after the word. Don't forget the period after the word. So, yes, we will say gal, but don't forget the period. Remember, once we abbreviate the word, right? Once we abbreviate the word, and then we have the abbreviated word followed by period. All right. Well done. Let's look at another one. Quote. One quote. One quote. How do we abbreviate quote in, or just how do we abbreviate quote? Quotes. All right. And if we were to find quote, right, then quote is QT period. Well done. QT period. Okay, the last one, and then we're going to our test. 1 pound. 1 pound. How are we going to abbreviate 1 pound? So 1 pound. All right. And if we were to find the abbreviated word for 1 pound, it will be LB period. Well done. LB period. That is 1 pound. All right. So now we're going to our test where we are going to abbreviate customary units of measures. And when it still comes to customary units of measurements, we still add the period at the end. All right. We need to abbreviate the unit of measurements 1 yard. 1 yard. Is it YDR or YR? 1 yard. So is it option one or option two? All right. And if we were to select the correct answer for 1 yard, then option one is correct. Option one is correct. All right. The next one says 1 pound. Is it option one PO or option two LB? All right. And 1 pound, we can say it is LB option two. Well done. Yes, LB. Inch, 1 inch. Is it option one or option two? All right. And if we were to find the abbreviation of inch, then we would say it's option two. So well done. Option two is correct. All right. 1 teaspoon. I'll take 2 teaspoons of sugar. 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of coffee. 1 teaspoon. Is it option one or option two? Teaspoons. Option one or option two? Teaspoons. All right. And if we were to select the option, right, or the correct option or the correct abbreviation of teaspoon, we would say it is option one. 1 teaspoon of coffee, 2 teaspoons of sugar. All right. The last one, 1 gallon. Is it option one or option two for gallon? So 1 gallon. All right. And if we were to select the correct abbreviation, we would say it's option two for 1 gallon. Well done. All right. So now we're going to the last one, which is units or metric units of measurements. And remember, when it comes to metric units of measurements, right? This we either measure distance, we measure liters, milliliters, right? Those are things that we measure. And when it comes to metrics, these ones, the metric units of measurements, we do not add we do not add a period after our abbreviated word. So we abbreviate the word, yes, but we don't add a period after our abbreviated word, right? This is when it comes to metric units of measurements, right? So once again, here we see our metric units of measurements. All right. So now we are going to abbreviate our metric units of measurements. The first one says 1 kilometer. How are we going to how are we going to abbreviate kilometer? 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer to school, 1 kilometer to the shop. Yes, and if we were to abbreviate 1 kilometer, we will say it is km for kilometer. Well done. All right, let's go to the next one. Milligram. Milligram. How do you abbreviate milligram? Milligram. All right, and if we were to select our abbreviated form for milligram, then yes, well done. MG for milligram. Well done. MG for milligram. And then lastly, 1 liter of milk. 1 liter. 1 liter. How do we abbreviate 1 liter? Like we don't use gallon in South Africa. We say liter. 1 liter of milk, 1 liter of juice, 2.5 liter of Coke, 2 liter Fanta. But we don't say gallons. So 1 liter. All right. And if we were to abbreviate this unit of measurement, we can either say alpha liter or capital letter alpha liter. It's really up to you. One of that two is correct. Well done. All right, so now we're going to our test where we are going to abbreviate metric units of measurements. Metric units of measurements. We need to abbreviate the units of measurements. 1 milligram. 1 milligram, is it MI option 1 or MG option 2? 1 milligram. Milligram. All right, and then we have option 2, which is cool. Remember milligram, not milliliters, milligram. So option 2 is correct. All right, 1 meter. Is it option 1, M for meter, or option 2 for meter? Option 1, ME for meter, or option 2 for meter? 1 meter. All right. And if we were to abbreviate the units of measurements, we would say it's option 2 for 1 meter. Well done. M for meter, only M. 1 kilometer, is it option 1 K for kilometer or option 2 km for kilometer? This is distance. 1 kilometer till we get to school. 1 kilometer until we get to the park. Kilometer, option 1 or option 2. All right. And if we were to abbreviate kilometers, we would say option 2. Well done. KM is kilometer. All right. One more and then we're done. 1 centimeter. Is it option 1 cm for centimeter or C for centimeter? Option 1 or option 2 for centimeters. And then we're done. Centimeter. And then we done. Centimeter. And if we were to select centimeters, we would say it's option 1. Well done. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on basically abbreviations, right? And abbreviations is a shorter version or shorter word, right, of a specific word. And this is basically the abbreviations that we did for, let's say, for the 2 days. But this is not the end of our lessons. Thank you very much, grade 3, for joining the class as well as for interacting. And you should have a good day further. Till next time, goodbye.